Next, we are going to write some code that configures Spring Security for user authentication. This class will help you understand the configuration that needs to be done in order to implement user authentication. So far, we have the user entity class, the user repository interface, and web security config with minimum configuration that configures a custom login page. And next, we need to create a new class that implements the user details interface defined by Spring Security. And this class wraps an instance of user object here. Upon successful authentication, Spring Security will return an instance of this ShopMe user details class representing currently logged in user. And to perform authentication or login, we need to create a new class, ShopMe user details service that implements the interface user details service defined by Spring Security and overrides the method load user by username method here. And in this method, we will call user repository method get user by email method here that returns a user object based on email here. And then Spring Security will validate the user's password based on the return user object to perform authentication. And then we need to update the web security config class to tell Spring Security that the ShopMe user detail service will be used as a user detail service, and the authentication provider is based on database. And behind the scenes, some filters in the Spring Security filter chain will intercept the request coming from the login page, and then it will call the configured user detail service to perform authentication. Come back to the project and let's create a new Java class. Here, under the com.shopme.admin.security package, the class name is ShopMe user details. And we have this class implements the interface user details as defined by Spring Security here. Okay, finished. Okay, here we go. The ShopMe user details class that implements the user details interface. And in this class, we need to wrap an instance of the user entity class user and create a constructor that takes this user here. So generate constructor using field here, choose user here. Okay, and then we need to override various methods defined by the user details interface. The first method, get authorities, will return a collection of granted authority or a list of roles assigned to this user. So here's how we need to code this method. We declare a set of row set here, row entity class here, rows equal user get rows here, and then we create a list collection of simple granted authority class here. Authorities equal new array list. And then we iterate through each row in the row set here. For a row in the row set here, and we add a new simple granted authority object to the authorities list collection here. Add new simple granted authority, and the constructor takes the row name, so we pass the row name here. Get the row name here. That's it for the get authorities method. And finally, we return the collection authorities here. This method will be used by Spring Security to get the list of assigned rows to this user. Okay, and then the get password method, we simply return the value of the password in the user here. Return user get password. And in the get username method, we return the email of the user get email. And for other methods, is the account unexpired, we just return true, meaning that the account is not expired. Account unlocked, return true. is credentials not expire, return true. And for the is enable method, we return the value of the method enable in the user object is enable here. That's it for the user details class. Next, we need to create a new class, show.me user detail service that implements the user detail service. This class will be used by Spring Security to perform authentication. Okay, so let's create a new class, show.me user details service, and have this class implements the interface user details service from Spring Security here. Okay, finished. And then in this class, we need to have reference to the user repository interface. So we use the AutoWire annotation here. Private user repository here. Repo. And as you can see in the user repository interface, we already declare the method get user by email here. This method will return a user object if the email is found in the database. So in the load user by username method here, we will call that method from the user repository. So we call user repo get user by email, and the username here is actually is the email, so we change the name to email. And return a user object here. And we should check if the user object is not null. Then we return a new show.me user details object wrapping the return user instance here. Else we throw an exception here because else the user object is null. Throw new username not found exception. This class is defined by Spring Security, and we set the error message here is could not find user with email. Okay, that's it for the show.me user detail service class. This class will be called by Spring Security when it is performing the authentication process. And then we need to update the Spring Security class here. We need to declare a method that returns an instance of the show.me user detail service class here. Public user detail service here. User detail service, and return an instance of the show.me user detail service. Return new show.me user detail service here. And we need to annotate this method using the bin annotation here. And then we need to write another method that configures authentication provider. Public DAO authentication provider here. Authentication provider. Here we tell Spring Security that we will use a DAO authentication provider. In other words, the authentication will be based on database, looking the user in the database. So create a new DAO authentication provider object here. Auth provider equal new DAO authentication provider, and we set the user detail service for this provider here, which is a return object of the method user detail service here. Change the method name user detail service here. Okay, and then we'll also set the password encoder for this authentication provider. Set password encoder, which is value of the method password encoder here, password encoder, and then we return this authentication provider object, return auth provider. Okay, and we need to override another method to configure the authentication provider. So source override implement method and choose a method configure with authentication manager builder here. Okay, and here we set auth set authentication provider is method authentication provider here. Okay, so that's the configuration for authentication. We need to declare a user detail service, an authentication provider, and configure authentication provider here. Okay, save the changes. Now we are ready to test the login function. Start the Swami admin application and open the MySQL Workbench program here to see the user information in the users table here, and open the Swami sample users data Excel document here to see the email and password here to test a login with those users. Okay, and access the Swami admin application here. And you see the custom login form here. Now enter any email to test the failed login, any password. When we got the login appears back again, and in the URL you can notice there's a new parameter question mark error here. That means login failed due to invalid email or password. To display the error message, we should update the login page here. So here we need to create a new div section that displays the error message just above the text. Access to Swami control panel here, a new div section, and we specify the condition to show this div section is the presence of the query parameter error here. So here we specify the condition th:\if, and the condition is param dot error. Error is the name of the parameter in the query here. Okay, and then we display the error message in a paragraph here with the class is text dash dangle. So the error message will be displayed in red color, and then to show the original error message generated by Spring Security, we should use this expression session dot spring underscore security underscore last underscore exception message exception and dot message. Okay, so this expression we display the original error message generated by Spring Security. Okay, save the change and test login failed again. Enter any email and any password, click login, and now you can see the error message is bad credentials here. Perfect, right? And now let's test with the valid email and password. Let's look at the Excel document, and I will use the email nam@codejava.net with the password is nam2020 here, nam@codejava.net, and password nam2020, and click login. You see we got the login page appears back and without any parameter in the URL. I think something wrong. Let's see in the console view. Oh, we got error here. The error is failed to lazily initialize the collection of row here. So that means the rows collection in the user entity class must be updated to enable eager load of the collection. So open the user entity class here. Open the user entity class, and here we need to specify the lazy lazy attribute for the many to many annotation here for the rows collection here. Okay, and we specify fetch type is eager here. Okay, save the changes, and now it should work. Okay, try to log in again. Now add code java.net and password now 2020. Enter. Okay, successful. We got the home page of the Shopee control panel appears here. Authentication successful. Then I have permission to see the user listing page here. You can see. Now let's try to log in with a user who is disabled here. The user Alfred Ephraim here with this email here and the password in the database for the user Alfred here. Let's see Alfred here, Alfred 2020 here. But because we have not implemented the logout function yet, so we need to restart the application. So click this button to restart it, and then we log in again. Okay, click the logo, and we need to log in again. And this time we enter the email of this user, and password is Alfred 2020. This user is disabled in the database. As you can see, the user Alfred here, the enable status is 0 here, and click login. And this time we got another error message, user is disabled. This is an error message generated by Spring Security. That's why it's very important to use the expression, this expression, Spring Security last exception in the login page to show the original error message generated by Spring Security.